Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to your YouTube channel, CA Sansaar. ICAI had notified the applicability of the revised 12th edition of Code of Ethics with effect from 1st July 2020. It was announced at the Council's 393rd meeting. According to the revised code, there are dedicated provisions that apply to all professional accountants in all circumstances when dealing with ethics and independence issues. The revised edition of the code has been made compatible with Indian conditions so that it does not contradict with Indian domestic law. Further, the provisions of the revised code have been aligned with the provisions of the Companies Act 30. While the revised code retains the fundamental ethical principles from the earlier code, it covers a refreshed approach and contains certain new, substantially revised requirements. To guide us all regarding the revised Code of Ethics, we are deeply honored to have with us past President of ICAI, CA Amarjit Chopra sir, and past Central Council member, CA Sanjiv Chaudhary sir. Amarjit sir needs no introduction, but having said that, I would still like to share with all of you a few glimpses of his professional life. Sir has a rich and long experience of more than 45 years. He is a senior partner in GSA and Associates. He was president of ICI in 2010-11 and vice president a year before. He was also chairman of National Advisory Committee on Accounting Standards by central government for 4 years. As you all would be aware, Sir has recently been nominated by Government of India as member of National Financial Reporting Authority. He has also been nominated by central government on bench 2 of disciplinary committee of ICI for 4 years, 2018 to 22. Sir was also nominated by central government as chairman of committee to revise company's auditor report order 2006. He was also nominated by central government on the standing committee for decriminalization of Companies Act 13. These were just few glimpses, and if I were to read in detail, it would take me complete webinar to finish them. About Sanjeev sir. Sir has 37 years of professional experience in domestic and international tax advisory and is currently senior advisor to BSR and Company LLP. He is also member of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India and CP Australia. Also member of the International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants, New York, USA since January 19. He was elected as member Central Council of ICAI from Northern Region for 2013-16 and also re-elected for 2016-19. He has served as a member of various committees of ICAI such as Expert Advisory Committee, Research Committee, Accounting Standard Board, etc. He has vast knowledge and experience in handling complex tax issues, including those relating to domestic, international taxation, transfer pricing, taxation of cross-border transactions, and regularly represents clients before various tax authorities. Again, just a brief introduction of Sanjeev sir. His accomplishments are way too many. A warm welcome to Vivek sir also. I request him to formally welcome our distinguished guests.
Thank you, Neha ji. Respected CA Amarjit Chopra ji, past President ICI, CA Sanjiv Chaudhary ji, past Central Council member ICI, CA Neha Gupta ji, and all other respected members of the profession. A warm welcome to all of you, and I hope everybody is fit and fine. First of all, my sincere thanks to Chopra sir. Again, I am saying in every webinar I said whenever Chopra sir with us, thanks are the small word for him. And I think no word उनकी डिक्शनरी में है नहीं. Whenever we ask for an advice, any webinar, always yes. And कभी भी आप फोन कर लो, every time you will get the call back. अगर if he is busy, then you will get the call back. Really, sir, you are wonder, truly. And after achieving all this, means president of ICI, many committees of the government, and still, like after achieving president post, people are so busy either in different works, but you are still serving our profession in any way. आज भी सर के शायद एक वेबिनार हो गया, might be एक और भी हो, but really you are different. And I would like to ask Neha, सर के ऊपर एक वेबिनार करवाना पड़ेगा. How they will manage, even Facebook पे भी एक्टिव हैं, क्रिकेट का भी शौक है. Really wonder, sir, and thank you very much once again. And regarding our another speaker, Chaudhary sir, uh, when he was Central Council member, I was also Regional Council member. Really great personality, really very, very intelligent, learned person, and so proud that he is the member of ISBA. From I think it's the first Indian. I have not about so much knowledge of that, but we are proud of you, Chaudhary sir. So thank you very much for being with us. And regarding today's topic, as Neha said, revised code of ethics. We all aware that ICI was established on 1st July 1949, and in 1963 they have come with the code of conduct, and in 1975 ICI established the Ethical Standard Board. Even before the ISWA, International Ethics Standard Board, it was established in 1976. And in 2001, ICI bring the code of conduct. I think Chopra sir at that time Central Council member was there, and in 2001 it was came with the code of conduct, and in 2009 नहीं 2001 में शायद code of conduct becomes the code of ethics. It becomes a code of ethics, and in 2009 they have adopted the IFAC code of ethics, and after the gap of 10 years in 2019 now they have revised the code of ethics. So we want to know much and much things from the Chaudhary sir and the Chopra sir, how it's good for us or it's difficult for the members. So now without taking any time, it's over to Chaudhary sir. Sir, please. Yes sir, आप बोलेंगे sir.
हाँ, okay.
मैं तो सिर्फ एक ही बात बोल सकता हूँ, ethics are always difficult to be followed.
Yes.
Always difficult. Never mind.
Well, thank you very much, respected Mr. Chopra, senior mentor. I have known actually Mr. Amarjit for almost more than 35 years now at a personal level. As you rightly said, he doesn't say no. He's always available to anyone and everyone. I think all his friends say the same thing. So, big tribute to you, sir, for guiding so many of us, and may God give you long and healthy life so that you keep guiding all of us. That's the pray we always have for you. Vivekji, an old friend again, we worked together in the council. Vivekji was in the regional council, then I was in the central council for a few years. And I think you're doing a great job by disseminating knowledge and sharing knowledge with people. Nehaji, good afternoon to you also. I think coming to the discussion for today on the code of ethics, I think you rightly said our institute had set up the ethics committee much before the IFAC had set up the ethics committee in the US, I think a year before. And I think absolutely right. 2009 was the year when the then council, in which Mr. Chopra also was a member, adopted the ISBA code of 2005 and converged and made changes to what was required for Indian conditions. So the responsibility, I think, which India has as an institute, being a member of IFAC, is to obviously considering whatever changes are happening, adapt them in case they are fine with us, consider them, make changes as you need, because in our country, in India, ICAI is supreme. Our council is supreme to make whatever changes are required. And whatever we need to follow, we'll follow. Whatever we don't need to follow, we need not follow. And subject to, obviously, the lawmakers, which is the MCA, the Indian government, the Companies Act, etc., etc. So they will have, obviously, their own laws, which the institute has to abide by. You're again right, Vivekji, when you said that after many years in 2018, rather 2019, when we adapted and looked at the 2018 code, I was a part of the council then, and the council looked at the 2018 code. In fact, we tried a couple of years earlier also, we could not succeed. 2016 code also, we were looking at making changes, but somehow council couldn't pass in time. We looked at the 2016 code in great detail at that time. And by the time we were looking at it, the ISBA came up with 2018, and the council said, why look at 16? Let's look at 18 now, because we have not passed the 16 code. So let's meet the latest, why not look at the 18? And that's where the council decided. and the volume 1 was passed by the council in February 19. The reason we had kept initially the date to be effective as 1st April 20 was that our part B had also to be updated. So you could not have one part ready and one part of the old code and make a mess of it. So the council rightly decided that make it applicable from 1st April 20, number one. And number two, it will give time to the institute and the members to learn the nuances of the code, what are the new provisions, and be ready when it comes. There were slight delays, in kind of approving the part B. And by the time the part B was approved, we were nearing the beginning of the year, and the council said, okay, instead of 1st April, let's make it 1st July. And that is how the 1st April became 1st July 20. Because both the things had to be synchronized. So today we have part A, which is the Code of Ethics. Part B, which basically contains our local laws, our local schedules of the Act, disciplinary mechanism, Companies Act provisions, our local guidelines, etc., etc. And then the Council in their wisdom also has prepared a volume 3, which contains a gist of disciplinary cases, so that the members are, get awareness about what are the cases and what are the decisions of the Council on those issues, which is a good guiding book for everyone to look at. So today we have 3 volumes, volume 1, 2, and 3. And now this is applicable from 1st July 20 as we speak, except 3 provisions which we will address, and I'm sure Mr. Chopra also will address on them. So this revised code is the 12th edition. We have had 11 editions earlier. The 2009 code was the 11th edition. This is the 12th edition. Now, if you look at some of the major changes, and I'll go through them in detail later, but if I have to pinpoint 4 or 5 or 6 main changes which have happened from the 9 code to the 2019, one is a new provision on the word is used as no clar, which is non-compliance with other laws and regulations. This is a new provision which has very far-reaching consequences. This, as of now, has been deferred, and the council will decide the date of its applicability later, but I'll touch upon this a little later. So this is one big change. Second is that there is some restriction on taxation services to be provided to audit clients. Our 2009 code said differently, and 2019 code is talking about differently. So there are some more restrictions because of the change in time. You see, the expectation of people are changing, the expectation of stakeholders is changing. So this is second major change from the earlier code. Third is the prohibition on management services. In fact, the correct word is management responsibility. So there is a prohibition on management responsibility for audit clients. So you can provide some services to the audit client, but you cannot take the management responsibility. So there is a difference between services and responsibility. So that the 2009 code had no such provision. 2019 code explains what it is, and I'll touch upon this again a little later. So there is one more provision which has been deferred. Our earlier code had a provision which provided that in case you receive fees which is almost 40% or more from your clients, then there are some certain restrictions which was more a recommendatory provision. The 2019 code had made certain changes. The fee limit was 15%. There were certain exceptions. The council in its wisdom has again deferred the applicability of this provision to a later date, because I think they'll make some changes to it, getting the feedback from members, and I think it will get notified at a later date. The one other change is that this new code uses the word shall instead of the word should. So that is one very big change, because it basically means that when they are using the word shall, a member shall do this, a member then must do this. There is no leeway given to a member not to follow it. So there's a word which is used as shall. And then I think there's an increased clarity on what is the applicability to a member, what provisions will apply to a firm, and what provisions will apply to a network firm. Because you see, the market is growing now. We have network in India also of firms. So the question is, which provision will apply to a firm or a network firm to an individual? there is again a complete clarity on that. Now, I'll basically, start with first point on the compliance part. A lot of people will ask you a question: why is it applicable? Why I need to comply with the code? Where do you get the authority from to tell me that the code is applicable to me? I must follow it. Now, if you look at the definition in Clause 1, Part 2 of the second schedule of the Act, I'm repeating, Clause 1, Part 2 of the second schedule, it says that a member of the institute, whether in practice or not, shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he contravenes any of the provisions of this Act or the regulations made thereunder, or any guidelines issued by the Council. Now, it says very clearly guidelines issued by the Council. Once this code is approved by the Council, it is approved as a guideline of the Council. So the code gets its authority from Clause 1, Part 2 of the second schedule to make sure that it is applicable to the members and members should follow it. And the word, again, I'm using shall because the code uses the word shall now. So if it is a guideline of the Council which says that the members shall follow it, the compliance becomes mandatory. I think the basic fundamental, as Mr. Chopra also said, what are the fundamental principles of the code? Those fundamental principles have not undergone any change. So if you look at the code, there are 5 fundamental principles it talks about. The first fundamental principle is integrity. Second is objectivity. Third is professional competence and due care. Fourth is confidentiality. And fifth is professional behavior. Now, if you turn the code, in fact, very interestingly, and that's where I think the challenge is, the first lines of the first paragraph of the code says, in our revised code, that a distinguishing mark of the accountancy profession is acceptance of the responsibility to act in the public interest. You see, we in fact ourselves say that our profession holds out to the public that we accept the responsibility to act in the public interest, and that is why there is an expectation much more from a chartered accountant. Now, if you look at the 5 fundamental principles which are defined in this code, and I'll just read the definition and I will not go into the details. What do they say for integrity? It says to be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationships. Very simple. To be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationships. That's integrity for a member to be kept. What is objectivity? Not to compromise professional or business judgment because of bias, because of conflict of interest, or undue influence of others. So you have to maintain your integrity at all levels. You can't be biased. You may have some biasness, but you can't bring in your bias when you're doing your work. There should not be any work which you do where there's a conflict of interest. Independence is a must. There should not be any influence on you when you're doing some professional work. Third is professional competence and due care. And again, not reading the entire definition, what they say is that the client expects that you are competent. You are taking due care of the knowledge of test laws, of training people. So then when they get service from you, they are sure that you are professionally competent and you are taking due care in ensuring that your knowledge is up to date. That's responsibilities. That's again, you hold out to the public that you will ensure that you are professionally competent and you due care. And then confidentiality, obviously about the client's matters. You always keep them confidential, whether the work or even afterwards. And then your behavior. It is such a subjective word, but very nicely defined in the code again to say that you will comply with relevant laws and regulations and avoid any conduct that the professional accountant knows or should know might discredit the profession. I mean, each fundamental principle, if you look at, and you look at the definition, it is so properly worded. And if you follow these 5 principles, I think these are fundamental principles which then goes on to explain the conceptual framework and say how a member needs to act in each and every circumstance. Now, again touching the new code, how the sections are structured. In the new code, the sections are structured very differently from the earlier code. So each section will have three parts. One is the introduction. It will explain what is the subject about. Then it will tell you the requirements. And certain paragraphs are with the word "are." And that means that "are," wherever it is "are" is written, that means a member shall follow. So they are distinguishing between a normal paragraph and the paragraph with this word "are," which is in capital and bold. And then there's an application material to explain how this thing is to be looked at, how that particular provision is to be applied. So the code is structured so well now. I think let's come and address a couple of areas now, because this was the brief, broad background. And my intent is to cover, in the next about 15-20 minutes, certain areas. And then, Mr. Chopra will take over and maybe add on these also, and maybe add on the practical examples as well. Now, this is one of the provisions which has been deferred, which is called NOCLAR in short, NOCLAR, NOCLAR, which is basically responding to non-compliance with laws and regulations, besides the financial implications. So here actually it says is that if there is any act of omission or commission committed by a client, a professional accountant, while during the course of his audit, if he comes across any error or omission which has a far-reaching consequence. So to give you an example and make it simpler, supposing you have a client who's contravening the environmental laws, or who is doing some terrorist financing, using some strong words, or who's doing some wrong things on data privacy or data use. Now, can you say that, look, my audit is under the Companies Act. Why should I look at these laws? This is not my problem. These new provisions say that if you come across during the course of your audit something which raises a concern, so you need to understand that and then take further steps. So it is going beyond the Companies Act. It casts a bigger responsibility on the members and the member who's working in the company also. So when this provision was passed last year in the council, we said, let's not make it applicable to all. First of all, let's start with listed entities only. So forget about sole proprietors, partnership firms, private companies. Start with listed companies only, number one. Number two, it will be applicable only to audit assignments. It will not be applicable to all assignments. That's the second restriction we had imposed. And third was it will be applicable to a member who is in service also in that entity. So not only that the auditor will have a difficulty, I think my member sitting on the other side is equally responsible. So there were the idea was that let's introduce this law slowly, because we have a very big country, we have small places also where the members may not be so conversant. Let's see the application for it for a couple of years and then make it applicable slowly. I think there is a huge expectation in the government for us to have this law. The council has to do some work on this as to how do we guide our members on this. How should a member respond? So there has to be some guidance from the institute for the members' guidance. And I think that's one reason that this provision has been deferred as of now. Most likely, maybe in the coming 3 to 6 months, the council will again debate this, make it applicable to a later date, maybe 6 months, 1 year, whatever the council decides. But this is one provision actually, which I have to look at Mr. Chopra's word in one of the interviews, that the responsibility of an auditor does not remain like a watchdog now, and you need not be a bloodhound, but you have to do much more, and I will probably explain much more. But I think this is one provision which casts that responsibility. It will come sooner or later, whether it comes in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, I am not on that. It is the wisdom of the council, they'll decide. But this is one provision which has far-reaching consequences. But I think, in my personal view, it is needed, and it will come in my personal view. But when, I don't know, the institute and the council will decide. So this is one provision which has far-reaching consequences. Then the other point I want to touch upon very briefly is a management responsibility. I think I mentioned in the beginning on the word management responsibility. If you look at the new code, it is para 600.7. So in the earlier code, it was not there. This is the 2019 code, which has a section on this. It basically says that the firm shall not assume a management responsibility for an audit client. It actually goes on to explain what is the management responsibility. Are you providing a service to a client and stopping there? Or are you going beyond? So if you are going beyond, then the service may become a responsibility. And to an audit client, you can't take a management responsibility, because then there is no independence left. It is like telling a client that, look, I must merge all three companies or do demerger, do this structuring. One is giving advice. You are giving advice on financial implications, accounting entries. Now, if you give this advice, it is only advice, it is fine. But once you sit on the other side and start taking decisions, then it becomes responsibility. And that is where this code very clearly says, sorry, the firm shall not assume more management responsibility for an audit client. And then it goes on to explain certain services which may not be management services. So, for example, can you provide a word processing service? The code says you can, because word processing service is not a management responsibility. Can you prepare administrative or statutory forms for the client approval? You can. Can you submit such forms as instructed by the client? It is again a very pure administrative job. It is not a management responsibility. So the code actually explains the difference in the services versus the responsibility and says you can't assume management responsibility. So it is a very clear distinction between responsibility and services. The next point, which I think I'll very briefly touch upon, is the non-assurance services. A lot is being discussed today as to what services a member or a firm or a network firm can provide to a client. One extreme is that once you're an auditor, you can't provide any other service. The second is, as our earlier code had, that you can provide a gamut of services as long as your independence is not impacted. And that is where I think still a tussle is going on between the Institute and the MCA. And Institute has made a representation to the MCA as to what they feel should be allowed as a non-assurance services, non-audit service. And I think the germane of this is the Companies Act also. The Companies Act section 144 very clearly prescribes certain set of services which cannot be provided by an auditor. So there is a list of services already. I think what I believe is the recommendation of the Institute is that if you want to expand that list, please expand that list and add maybe 2 more services. But it should not be that once you're an auditor, then you cannot provide any other service. You see, there is another thought behind this, as I understand in my personal view, that how will our firms in India grow? If I say that my audit practice should be only an audit practice and I can't provide any other service to an audit client, then my firm can't grow with those clients. I'll have to look at the other set of clients. You see, we want larger firms to grow in our country. We should have maybe the top 20, 50, 100, 200 firms, or maybe more, which may have more than 10, 15, 20 partners of a larger size, can do bigger work, bigger audits, etc. How will they grow? If you do not permit them to grow beyond audit only, that's one thought, then I think there should be certain set of services which are non-assurance services. As long as they do not impact your independence, I think those should be permitted, is what probably the thought process is. But I think one will see as we go along. One other change which the code has made is on the contingent fee. There was always a thought that a contingent fee, which is dependent on happening of an event, is a prohibited thing. It is not allowed. Now, that is not correct. We have Regulation 192 in our earlier code of ethics also, which has a list of places, list of services where a member can charge contingent fee. So, for example, if you are a liquidator, your fee may be dependent on the value of the assets liquidated. If you're a receiver, your fee may be dependent on the amount collected. So the earlier code also recognized that in certain cases, a member is free to take and accept a contingent fee. So, for example, a cooperative society, Your fee may be dependent on the share capital or the working capital or the receipts of the society. So it is contingent. If the receipts are more, your fee can be more. It is nothing wrong in it. This new code adds two more items to this list. One is because of the new law, which is the insolvency law. So if you're an insolvency professional, your fee is also dependent on what is the proceeds of the insolvency assets. Now, there should be no prohibition on that. But the court recognizes clearly that tomorrow, if a member charges that fee, there is no misconduct. There is no professional misconduct. That's one. And second, I think the point which is debated in the council a lot is that if you are providing non-assurance services to a non-audit client, so let me repeat, it is not your audit client, it's a non-audit client. And if you provide a non-assurance services to a non-audit client, which is contingent, then that is permitted. So, for example, I'm not doing an audit of XYZ Private Limited, and it comes to me that, look, overhaul my system, I want to reduce my cost. And I said, look, I'll be able to make sure that your costs are reduced by 30%. And the client says, if you're able to reduce my cost by 30%, I'll give you, say, point X percentage of the costs reduced, if you reduce more than 30%. And I agree to that. Non-audit client, 1 year later, he looks at his financials, and if I meet that criteria, then he gives me a fees. Now, it was contingent. It was contingent on my delivering some value to a client. Can I do that? Now, that is permitted. But it is very important for the members to note that it is for a non-audit client that you can provide non-assurance services. So that's another thing which has changed. I think a lot of questions are asked on can I be a director simpliciter? This question is asked many a times to many of us wherever you go. Can I be a director simpliciter, and what is meant by director simpliciter? So earlier our code did not have the definition of director simpliciter. The 2019 code contains the definition, and it is very interesting, just 4 lines. It says, director simpliciter means an ordinary simple director. You are an ordinary director who's neither a MD or a whole-time director and is required only in the board meetings of the company and not paid any remuneration except for attending such meetings. So someone will ask you, can I sign checks? The answer is no. Then you are running the operations of the company. Can I do something else? So the answer is very simple. You are neither an MD nor a whole-time director. You need to attend the board meetings. You are paid for the board meetings attending. And in some cases, one is paid as a percentage of profits also when they're appointed. But there is nothing for providing any services. You can't provide any service. You can't do any work. Because if you do that, then you're not a director simpliciter. So this question, I think, has been debated a number of times as to what is director simpliciter. Now, I think the last point before I would request Mr. Chopra to come in is that, a lot of places there is a feeling among some of us that we have followed the international code as it is. Let me explain, let me confirm that we looked at the international code. Our forward also says very clearly that the code is converged to the Indian conditions because it recognizes, so for example, rotation of directors, rotation of firms, the applicability of RBI laws on the rotation of auditor. We'll have to follow wherever there is a bank audit. The code very clearly contains those provisions differently than what ISPA requires. So ISPA doesn't have rotation of firms because internationally the firms are not rotated. There may be a partner rotation. But in our country, there is a firm rotation today. So the code recognizes the firm rotation. The code recognizes the partner rotation also. It clearly conveys what is the duration for which a partner will remain as a partner. It defines, in fact, a key audit partner also, because there's a dispute on that also. So one point I wish to very clearly clarify that ISPA code has not been applied as such, number one. The council looked at it. Whatever had to be converged to the Indian laws, the Indian Companies Act, our regulations, etc., we have done that. Two, council is supreme. So today also, if the council believes that something is again to be amended, altered, so for example, the provision which talks about 15% fees as compared to a 40% earlier, the council is relooking at that. The council in its wisdom can decide whether the fee limit of 5 lakhs should be 25 lakhs or 30 lakhs or 20 lakhs, whatever it is. They will probably decide that in the next meeting or next couple of meetings, depending on the availability of time and the difficulties of COVID, to convene those meetings. So that is point number 2. And third is, they can keep on making changes. So as on today, for example, ICAI is making changes again to the code. You're learning. You can keep on making changes. And that is where our learnings will permit us to make these changes as the council deems fit. So there is nothing sacrosanct once a code is prepared. You see, whatever was right 10 years back may not be correct today. And whatever is correct today may not be correct tomorrow. It is, ever evolving world. I mean, could anyone imagine we'll be not going or walking out of the house for 4 months? But we are sitting and working from home, all of us. The laws are changing and are being applied even today also. In fact, there is a guidance coming from our institute also as to what to do during COVID times on various issues. So these are difficult times, changing times, but keep this aside for a minute. The council of our institute is supreme in defining what is applicable to its members. Nobody from outside can tell us what to do or what not. It is our responsibility, and we have to assume that responsibility. And when I say we, meaning the council of the institute. I think, as I said, there are 3 provisions which have been deferred. One was NOCLAR, second is this fee, and third is certain taxation services to audit clients. And very briefly touching upon that, our earlier code had almost everything which was permitted to be done by a chartered accountant. As again I said, times are changing. So for example, just touching upon one point, if I am the tax consultant of an audit client and I am telling him to pass certain accounting entries, say for provision for taxes or for certain implications, and then I do an audit of that, the question which one has to look at is there a self-review threat? Because you are reviewing your own work. And the public expectation is that you should not review your work. Now, certain services, the code now recognizes that they should not be allowed. And if they're allowed, you have to have safeguards. I think the council wishes to look at it again. And these are 3 areas which has been deferred as of now. So NOCLAR. Second is that fee, the relative size, 15%, 40%, 5 lakhs, 25 lakhs, etc. And third is taxation services to audit clients. So these 3 areas have been deferred by the council in its 30th June meeting, that they will notify these provisions at a later date, to be notified later. Probably they will have consideration of this. But subject to these 3 provisions, the new code is effective as of 1st July. So sir, with this I stop. I hand over to Mr. Chopra, and we'll have the benefit of a huge amount of practical experience, from him coming out with, and I've heard him on a number of times on the disciplinary cases also, which he has shared publicly. How those cases were dead, what were the issues. So I think it'd be good to listen to him again on these issues. And over to you, sir, and look forward to listening to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. So am I audible? I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Vivek ji, Sanjiv ji, Neha ji, and of course all those who are listening to the program. I think Sanjiv has already brought out all the salient features of this particular code, if you ask me. और अगर मैं हिंदी में बोलूं तो काउंसिल ने वो 3 चीजों को डेफर करके इसकी आत्मा को तो वैसे ही सुला दिया इस कोड ऑफ एथिक्स के। अब तो शरीर है, शरीर तो पहले भी यही था और शरीर अब भी यही है। बेसिकली उसमें एक नई आत्मा इन्फ्यूज करने की कोशिश की गई थी, परंतु उस आत्मा को सुला दिया गया, बिकॉज द रीजन बीइंग के मेरे ख्याल में काउंसिल को ये लगता है, मेंबरशिप को ये लगता है कि ये सब चीजों को फॉलो करना बड़ा मुश्किल। हिंदी में बोलूं तो कोई दिक्कत तो नहीं, कोई साउथ से तो नहीं सुन रहे हैं ना प्रोग्राम को? साउथ से सुन रहे हो तो फिर मैं इंग्लिश में जाऊंगा। लेट मी बी वेरी
दोनों है सर,
क्लियर। हैं?
मिक्सचर है सर, मिक्सचर है सर,
साउथ से हैं?
होंगे सर
साउथ से हैं
डेफिनेटली।
तो फिर मैं इंग्लिश में बोलूं,
आप
देन आई विल स्पीक इन इंग्लिश।
दोनों में बोलिए। हाँ,
No,
बोलिए।
the point that I'm trying to say is that you have taken the soul out of the entire code. Body remains. If you have deferred these three things, the soul is dead. Believe me, there is no soul left in the code of ethics. Because rest of the things were there even earlier. I don't find any difference, very frankly. And मैंने हमेशा एक चीज को माना, I have always believed in one thing. Ethics even otherwise cannot be codified. Ethics को आप law की shape नहीं दे सकते. You can't say that this is ethics and this is law. No. Ethics is a kind of behavior that I expect from the others when he behaves with me. So similar code, similar behavior is expected of me when I deal with the people at large. I think that is what the ethics is. It is as simple as saying that if I expect my daughter-in-law to be good, then I have to expect my daughter will also be good at her in-law's place. I think it's as good as that. So this is what the ethics will mean at the end of the day. If I start accepting, if I start demanding dowry and then someone else demands dowry, I think both of us are on the same footing for that matter. So I think when we talk of ethics, ethics is a much wider term. It is not law, but unfortunately, what happens in political system is they frame the law in a manner that they can be unethical. The beauty of the system is that the laws are framed in a manner that they can be unethical also. Now, 6 of the legislators contested on the ticket of BSP. I'm mentioning the name in Rajasthan, and ultimately got merged into Congress. And today in the courts, the case what is going on, that whether these 6 MLAs can merge into the Congress or not. Now, of course, the courts will continue today, but whether the BSP MLAs had any locus standi, moral locus standi, to actually merge into the Congress. I think that's the point. It may be legal to do so, but is it ethical to do so? Similarly, in another 2 states, particularly, which I have been quoting extensively at different points of time, what one has come across is the 2 parties combined together fought against the other 2 parties, and both of them leveled charges against each other that A and B were contesting against C and D and were leveling charges. A and B said that C and D are corrupt, and C and D said that A and B are corrupt. When the elections were over, AB on one side, C combined with AB and have formed the government, and D, which was having the maximum number of seats, are sitting in the opposition. Now, this can be legal, but it is totally unethical if you ask me, because people voted for you based upon a particular mandate, and the mandate was given to these C and D to rule, not A, B, and C to rule. But then legally it is permitted. Legally it is permitted. You can be in a prison, you can be in a jail and still contest the election. You can be elected as an MP, you can be elected as an MLA, and from there you can go and vote in the parliament. This is legal. And you can save the government, or you can actually be responsible for the fall of a government, for that matter. So I think when we talk of legal law and when we talk of ethics, these are 2 different things. And at times, believe me, you can be doing certain things which are illegal, and yet you may be ethical. One example that I've been giving for some time now is, you are on a red light, standing on a red light, and you suddenly see across the red light there is some person who has met with an accident and nobody is coming to rescue. You jump the red light, you go there, you take the person out and then put him in whatever your own car and take him to the doctor. No, you jump the red light, it is illegal, there is no doubt about it. But what you did was the most ethical thing to do in your life. So I think at times When even you break the law, you can be ethical at times. And of course, when you are being legal, you may be yet unethical in the circumstances. Only the circumstances will determine. Now, one question that I keep on asking myself and I keep on asking the various members is, we had the need to, should we have a need to say that the incoming auditor should be communicating with the previous auditor? अभी तो हमने लॉ में डाला है, शेड्यूल का पार्ट है, शेड्यूल 1 का पार्ट है. But you think it should be required? I have my serious doubts that it is required. It must have been a part of ethical practices that I have to do it, even otherwise, without even being put in the code. The reason being, suppose I resign and Mr. Khurana has to take up the audit. Now, Mr. Khurana should be worried why I have resigned. If I have retired in the normal course, it is a different matter. But if I have resigned in the present days when it is very difficult to find a client, very frankly, and I am resigning from a client, I think there must be real ground for me to resign. There must be certain thing grave that I have resigned from a particular client. And in those circumstances, I think it is imperative that I must actually communicate with the previous auditor. Please tell me why you have resigned. What are the circumstances in which you have resigned? Rather, I must pick up my telephone and try to find out कि भाई ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं हुआ कि जिसमें कल अगर मैं साइन करूंगा तो मुझे गड़बड़ होगी. I think that is, you forget about anything. This is your clutch. This is your dhal. This is your shield. This is your mask. In Corona today, what we are all doing, we are wearing the mask. Ethics also can become a part of your mask. And I think if I communicate with the previous auditor, and if he can throw out some light, कि भाई इसमें ये गड़बड़ हो रही थी, then I think he is serving a mask to me, basically. But unfortunately, we don't want to do it. We rather try to grab an opportunity. If the other one leaves, I will grab that particular opportunity. I think that's absolutely bad. And the other thing I will like to say is, I've been talking it openly. If a client has to remove somebody, he will remove. If not this year, next year. You see, you can't avoid that, particularly in the case of the tax audits. I can tell you, we have had cases where the fee may be 1,000 rupees, fee may be 5,000 rupees. Institute spends 2 lakh rupees on resolving that particular issue. And ultimately, what is the penalty? Reprimand, or maybe 1 day, or maybe 15 days, maybe 20 days, because this non-communication is too small a thing. The disputes amongst the members inter-se is not a big thing to us. I think what is important is the schedule 2, where the disputes are between the outside parties and the members. I think that's very important. That's where the ethics actually come into play far more strongly. So I will like to focus on something. I think Sanjeev has already brought out one thing. In 2009, we had 2 volumes. The volume 1 was, which was dealing with the basic conditions of ethics, which laid down basic principles with regard to independence, with regard to integrity, with regard to objectivity, with regard to confidentiality. All those clauses were there. And so far as the second part was concerned, second volume was dealing with the regulations that we have framed from the council side for the membership to follow. Like we say that you cannot conduct more than 65 tax audits for that matter. I think that's a part of, like we said that you can go up to 40% of your gross receipts. In that particular case, from a particular client, you cannot go beyond that. And if you go beyond that, probably it could be a case where your dependence is actually jeopardized. So all those regulations which the institute brought in, like the institute said that you can devote 24 hours on the teaching. You can devote 24 hours to the teaching. So that's a part of the regulation of the institute. So all those regulations which have been brought in by the institute on its own, those are contained in volume 2. Even today, those are contained in volume 2. Volume 1 is again dealing with the fundamentals. Third volume is something new. Third volume is the cases that we have decided over the years, basically. in the disciplinary mechanism. I think that was needed even otherwise. People must know as to how people have been behaving themselves. I tell you, one of the interesting cases, the year I entered the council was, one of the chartered accountants wrote a book, How to Evade Income Tax. And it was not North Indian who wrote this book. It was a Mumbai person who wrote this particular book. No, as a chartered accountant, we expect our member to behave in a particular manner. Because one of the essentials of the code of ethics is professional behavior. If I am a chartered accountant, my behavior should reflect that I am a chartered accountant. Though very rarely it gets reflected, if you ask me, in a lighter mode. But I am expected to behave myself that I am a chartered accountant. Like the sting operation which took place during the demonetization on TV. No, that's not the professional behavior. If you are not a chartered accountant, you keep on doing whatever you want to do. But if you are a chartered accountant and you resort to those kind of practices and you are caught on sting operation, I think you are bringing a bad name to the entire profession. I always keep on quoting one thing. A husband and wife, both chartered accountants from Delhi, and I'm talking of 2000, 2001 probably. It was 2001 in which this case, 2000, 2001 in which this case came up. Both chartered accountants, the girl and the boy, got married. And then the girl filed a case against the fellow. They had a very small child, maybe few months child, if you ask me. And the girl filed the case against the chartered accountant and said that he has been unprofessional. He has been behaving like unbecoming of a chartered accountant. He has been beating me. He has been abusing me. He has been whatever allegations she could level. She leveled all allegations. Myself, Sitaramanji, Ashok Chandakji, Chaudhary Sahab, you are there. When these two persons appeared before us, from the discussions we could understand that he is being beaten up every day in the evening. But he could not prove, she could prove. And he was held guilty of professional other misconduct. So what one is saying is that when I am a chartered accountant, because one of the essentials of a chartered accountant is that he has to conduct himself professionally. When I say professional behavior means which is becoming of a chartered accountant, which should not be unbecoming of a chartered accountant. You put a label at the back of your car and you say chartered accountant, and then you start misbehaving in public somewhere. I think this is not fair, because then you are damaging the reputation of the entire profession. So there are certain things which need not be said, very frankly, need not be said. But at the same time, these need to be practiced. Now, in the first volume, when Sanjiv talked of that we have got the concept of independence, we have got the concept of objectivity, we have got the concept of confidentiality, we have got the concept of objectivity, we have got the concept of professional behavior. All this very well said. There is no doubt about it. What is expected of a chartered accountant while behaving, particularly in the assurance function, is that he will be independent in his thought process. He is not influenced by anyone on the earth. He is a professional and he will exercise his professional competence. And one of the essentials of a chartered accountant as an ethical part is that he has to be competent also. It goes without saying that he has to be competent. He can't be professionally incompetent, because any profession, I keep on repeating it at the cost of repetition, that any profession stands on two legs. This is what I heard from Dr. Kamal Gupta. Any profession stands on two legs. One leg is of competence and the other leg is of ethics. If one leg gets fractured, you limp. If both legs get fractured, then you crawl. And I always say that neither we have to limp nor we have to crawl, we have to run, which means both the legs, that's of competence and ethics, have to be intact basically. So this is a very, very important aspect. So Another thing which is expected of a chartered accountant is that he has to be competent. Competence arises out of what? That he has to update his knowledge. All this, what you are doing, Vivek, is updating the members on the various issues. Ethics is one part, let's forget. But if you organize a seminar of Dr. Girish Ahuja or Sanjeev ji on taxation, I think you are updating the members and you are increasing you are enhancing their competence in that particular field. So competence is another one. Independence is one, that your behavior cannot be influenced by any consideration. You should protect yourself. You should make yourself immune from any kind of inducements or adducements. You should make sure that you cannot be affected. Your behavior cannot. Independence can come from what? If your wife is the MD of a company and you become the auditor of the company, can you be independent? It can be the vice versa also. If your father is the MD of the company, is the main promoter of the company, can you be independent? The answer is no. If you have invested in the company very heavily and you become the auditor of the company, can you be independent? Because you will always like to see that it gives a rosy picture so that you can get more and more of the dividends and your returns go up. So you cannot be independent in those circumstances. If you start accepting gifts of a very, very high value on Diwali, Dussehra, in New Year, etc., from the client, and in the case of Muslims on Eid, and in the case of Sikhs probably on Gurupur, then can you be independent? Your fee is 50,000 and you are accepting gifts of diamonds. Can you be independent in that case? Your behavior is bound to be somewhere dependent upon these factors also. So it says that you have to be independent, you have to be competent, you have to maintain the confidentiality of the client. If you are having two clients in the same industry, you will not part with the information of one client to another, which can be misused or which can be abused by the other client for that matter. So confidentiality is another part of it. But confidentiality does not mean that you have to be so confidential, you have to maintain so much of confidentiality that even if this very client comes to you and says, hand over my file to me, and you will say, no, no, I don't hand over your file to you. You can't be behaving in that particular manner. People have been charged, believe me, recently only. I report one case on confidentiality. It is not even 6 months that we have charged. He's a person from South, if I'm not mistaken. This person was employed. He's a chartered accountant. He was employed by the company. He went into some argument, went into some fight. The company, and he started writing to the competitors of the company and wrote everything to the competitors of the company, that this company is taking bank loan from so and so, and this company has indulged in these kind of practices. And he wrote to some other authorities also. Till the time he was writing to the income tax department or certain statutory authorities, we were not that worried. But the moment he wrote it to the competitors, he said, no, this is not done. See, if you are trying to be a whistleblower vis-a-vis the statutory authorities, you do it. And then you leave the job. Nobody stops you to do that. You can be a whistleblower. And I think Knockler requires you to do that only, basically, if you ask me. But this man, what he did, he played spoil sport, and he went on to the extent of going to the competitor and telling the competitor who are my main vendors and who are my main parties, named everybody to him. Then this party complained. And when he appeared before us, he said, they have not released my salary. They have not done this. They have not done that. We told him very clearly that you had other forums on which you could have agitated all these points. But so far as we are concerned, we are only concerned with your behavior. We cannot penalize them because we have no power to penalize them. Our disciplinary committee can only look at the behavior of our member. We cannot look at the behavior of the other side. Of course, I can tell you of late, what we are trying to do, even in my presidency period, we tried to do that If some companies are doing wrong and then filing complaint against the members, we have started writing about that to the MC also. We have started providing information to them also that this is what the company is doing. It is all for information. We are not filing any complaint against them. So that these parties also know that if they can come around and file a complaint against our members, we can also inform the MCA in turn as to what kind of practices have been followed by these companies. But that does not absolve our member of his behavior, basically. If at all he has misadventured into something. So what I am trying to say is, I have to maintain confidentiality under all those circumstances. And then professional behavior I have already talked of, basically. That I have to be very, very clear. And objectivity. Objectivity is that irrespective of the fact, whatever may be the circumstances, I will not go with a prejudiced opinion. No way I will go with a prejudiced opinion. I will be absolutely, you can say objective, informing my judgment. When I say objectivity, objectivity can be even influenced by the independence. No? If I have accepted the diamonds from the party, then my objectivity is lost. And that is why they say that don't do it. Don't get into kind of a position where your objectivity will be lost. And even if you have accepted it, say, please be objective informing. You cannot give a report, favorable report, when the things are absolutely haywire. So you cannot be prejudiced in your opinion, either against or for the client, for that matter. So they say be objective. Do what a professional is expected to do in these circumstances. You see, it is not to lay down. Sometimes it surprises me that we have to lay down in the court that you will act with all kind of due diligence and you will not be negligent in discharge of your duties. Do we need to lay it down? This is expected of a professional. I'll tell you that there are people, at least 4 or 5 people whom we have charged with the guilt or with the misconduct in the recent times, where they gave certain project reports, projections, and these are all small people. I feel pained to actually penalize them, but we have no choice. They were from South, coming from the Mufassil towns. Some person has projected that this particular firm or this particular company will attain this kind of a turnover, and then has issued the projected figures. When they issue the projected figures, if on a turnover of say 50 crore, you had a working capital limit of say 10 crore, on a projected turnover of 100 crore, if your limit is going to be 15 crore, then interest for 15 crore has to be charged. Surprisingly, the interest has come down even below the 10 crore. Salary cost has come down. Other costs have come down because you wanted to show a particular profitability. But that is not done. That is not expected of you. And if you do that, then you are playing with your own professional caliber. You are playing with your professional career, for that matter. The other thing that we have really looked at it in all these cases where I'm talking of is, in some of the cases, the depreciation has not been even projected. Because if the depreciation has been provided, then it will incur a loss. How can you do that? Depreciation has to be provided for. There are fixed assets there. There are utensils which are being leased out by some of these societies. But if you provide depreciation on those utensils, this society gets into a loss. But this society wants to go to the bank and get a loan. Or this society wants to take money from somewhere else. And you have not provided depreciation showing that these societies are making profits. So we had to charge our member with the professional misconduct, saying that you have not exercised due diligence and care which should have been exercised by you. I'll give you more examples. More examples in the sense, we had a person, we had a case coming from where? We had a case coming from Enforcement Directorate. Enforcement Directorate filed a case that this person has conducted an audit, and it was a case of tax audit, let me put it this way. This person has conducted a tax audit, but we have come across a situation where no office of such a firm exists in the address, at the address where the address has been given. Now, when this man appeared, he's a man from West. This man appeared before us. We asked him, "You conducted the audit?" He said, "Yes, I conducted the audit." We asked him the other question, that if you conducted the audit, where did you conduct the audit? He said, "I conducted the office, in my office." We said, "Who brought you the books of accounts?" He said, "Accountant brought me the books of accounts." We asked him, "Did you ever meet the promoter or the partners?" Because it was a partnership firm. He said, "I never thought it necessary to meet the partners." Where was the need to meet the partners? We told him that you had to do some KYC of your party. After all, you need to have their PAN number, that PAN number there. After you need to meet them to find out that they are not criminals at least. You have not even met them. He said, "No." I said, "How did you ensure that these are their signatures? The signatures are of the person on the balance sheet who are actually your clients." He said, "But their accountant used to bring the books of accounts. Their accountant used to bring me the balance sheet." Then we asked him the further question, "Did you ever verify the inventory?" He said, "No, I didn't have to verify the inventory. You can find out in the balance sheet I have written as verified and certified by the management." Then we asked him, "Did you verify the cash?" He said, "I have written as certified by the management." When we said that you could have easily said the entire balance sheet and entire profit and loss account as certified and verified by the management, where was the need of your signatures? He said, "You come to that particular town." I'm not naming that particular town. It's a very important town in today's date. He said, "You come to that town, everyone does it like this only." And all this is in the verbatim minded. He says, "There we have the convention that accountants bring the books to our offices. We don't go to the client's office." Now you tell me what to say. Is it the kind of professional skepticism I'm used to bring in? Where a person comes and I tell you, he was talking with all kind of authority. He had absolutely no regrets about whatever he had done. One normally feels, यार कि इससे गलती हुई है, कुछ तो regret होगा इसकी आंखों में. Absolutely no regrets. And he kept on telling us, "You come and I will show you that everyone is doing this." What do you do? In another case, which was, to my mind, slightly a high-profile case, a case has been filed. We also understand that that case has been filed more out of some kind of a rivalry also. Rivalry was between few individuals, but the case has been filed. But when we cross-check, the director who has signed the balance sheet and the director who was considered to be in India, and we were told that this director has been in India all this period. We were told that this director has been living abroad all the time, and maybe he comes for 7 days in the entire year, and he does not attend any of the board meetings, but his signatures were there on the meetings. And when we asked for when were the minutes of these meetings signed, the witness, who himself was a director, said, "Sir, these minutes were signed only a week before coming to you." You tell me, this is the position virtually in all private limited companies, if you ask me. This is the way people project. Because in private limited companies, we don't give significance to the writing of the minutes. But when a disciplinary case is filed, we need to verify that. And when the disciplinary goes into that, and disciplinary looks at it that the minutes were never recorded, and minutes have been recorded only 7 days back, you cannot have the benefit of doubt even from the disciplinary committee. So my humble request is, all what we have to do is, we need to be independent, we need to maintain confidentiality, we need to have professional skepticism, we need to be objective, we need to be competent. We need to have every kind of a virtue which a person should have. होगा या नहीं होगा ये मैं नहीं कह सकता. हम में वो सब गुण ढूंढे जाते हैं जो भगवान में ढूंढे जाने चाहिए. पर भगवान में भी कोई अवगुण तो रहा होगा, हम में भी शायद कोई अवगुण रहेगा, इसमें भी कोई शक नहीं. परंतु we may not be perfect. I always tell the members who get up and tell me something that draw a Lakshman Rekha at least. एक Lakshman Rekha तो draw करो. And make sure that you will not cross that Lakshman Rekha under any circumstances. Come what may, you will not cross that Lakshman Rekha. If you don't draw any Lakshman Rekha, then you will keep on crossing the Lakshman Rekhas. Rather, every Rekha will become your Lakshman Rekha. I'm not talking of any other Rekha, I'm only talking of the Lakshman Rekha, basically, for that matter. So, the point that one is trying to drive you home is, please be skeptical. I think that's very important from a professional angle. And ultimately, the member, we only can charge only the member. We cannot charge the companies. We cannot charge the firms. And today, maximum number of the complaints which are filed, you know, which are filed by whom? These are being filed either by the two disgruntled partners. जब दो पार्टनर्स का आपस में झगड़ा होता है उसमें से एक फाइल कर देता. जब दो डायरेक्टर आपस में भिड़ते हैं वो फाइल कर देते हैं. दो प्रमोटर आपस में भिड़ते हैं वो फाइल कर देते हैं. दो सोसाइटी मेंबर्स आपस में भिड़ते हैं वो फाइल कर देते हैं. साउथ में अगर आप हैं तो आपको किसी मठ का ऑडिट नहीं लेना चाहिए. मुंबई में अगर आप हैं तो किसी रेजिडेंशियल सोसाइटी का आपको ऑडिट नहीं लेना चाहिए. वहां झगड़े चलते रहते हैं. मैंने तो ये देख लिया डिसिप्लिनरी कमेटी में बैठ के. उनमें अमाउंट कुछ इन्वॉल्व नहीं होता, बट आवर मेंबर गेट्स एंटेंगल्ड विद दैट. So my request to you is, no client comes to your rescue at the end of the day. You have to practice your own ethics. You have to practice your own, and you have to maintain your own documents, you have to gather your own audit evidence for that matter. Some of the cases I will come slightly later on. Now the point which Sanjiv made out, that this particular code of ethics actually had three, जो उनकी सोल थी, जो आत्मा थी, जो मैंने पहले बोला, वो थे 3 पॉइंट. The entire soul has been taken out. Maybe that in the next 1 year the soul is put back in the body and the body starts again waking up. But I am doubtful that it may happen, particularly in a few of the circumstances. But I will also like to deal with this situation. One of the points which has been brought out is nuclear. But this code of ethics at least brings out one very nice thing, which is very, very positive feature of this code of ethics, and that is, it makes people in service as much liable as the members in profession. We must appreciate one thing. Who provides me the books of accounts? Who provides me the statement? Who is supposed to comply with the accounting standards? Who is supposed to comply with the other laws? It is not me. It is the management. It is the CFO of the organization. It is the CEO of the organization. If a chartered accountant is the CFO of the organization, general manager of finance of the organization, director of finance of the organization, he is also supposed to follow the code of ethics. I'm not the only one to follow the code of ethics. So they have made them liable. I think that's the best point to happen. In nuclear also, the same thing has been brought in. Non-compliance with other laws and regulations of the land. But before I get into that, I would like to say one thing. Institute is forgetting, the council is forgetting one thing today. That there is a standard on auditing, already 250, which deals with the non-compliances of laws and regulations. And at least that deals with the financial laws and regulations, which all those laws and regulations which have an impact, all those laws and regulations which have an impact upon the financial statements. And that particular standard itself very clearly says that if there is a law or there is a regulation which has a financial impact, and the financial impact is significant, and if you don't follow that, in that particular case, if it affects my true and fair view, the auditor is supposed to qualify the main report. I'll give you 3 of the examples. Suppose the company has already received a notice कि भाई environmental laws आप follow नहीं कर रहे हो, आपने जो the pollution control equipment which you had to actually install, you have not installed that pollution control equipment. Then the very fact is that your going concern concept is not being met. If you do not have the money to fund that pollution control equipment and the notice has been received that after 6 months they will close down your operations, if you don't install that pollution control equipment, you don't have the money, the banks are not willing to finance you, then where is the going concern? The AS1 itself is not in compliance, if you ask me. And SA 570 revised today very clearly brings out this particular fact. So you have to qualify your main report, forget about anything else. The other thing is that suppose you are calculating the bonus and allocable surplus of the bonus works out to 20% of the bonus. And you are providing only 8.33%. So baki 11.67% kaun dega bhai? Who will give that? Am I not supposed to qualify my report on that particular ground? I am supposed to qualify my report on that particular ground. I am auditing a particular client जिसके यहाँ पे 50 employees काम कर रहे हैं. The 50 employees are working in his place. And when those 50 people are working in his place, he is liable for provident fund implementation. And if he applies for provident fund registration, his cost goes up by 24%. Now suppose your salary, I'm just giving a hypothetical example. Your salary is 2 crore. And out of this 2 crore, 1 crore 50 lakh will definitely attract the PF, which you have to contribute. How much is the amount? It will almost be, you can say, 20% of 1 crore 50 lakh. Make out what is the amount of thereof. Now, if you are declaring a profit of 15 lakh only, are your financial statements reflecting true and fair view? The answer is no. So you have to actually bring out the concept that in your case, that this particular requirement is not being met. If you are not paying the gratuity to your employees who have actually served you for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, are you not supposed to qualify the report? You are definitely supposed to qualify the reports in those cases. So it is already there, Sanjiv ji. The only thing now Nokler brings in is, other than these financial laws, now it is more dangerous. It says that suppose the company has indulged itself into certain unethical practices. They have violated certain laws. They have breached certain regulations. Like if they are into money laundering, if they are bribing some of the officials, if they are a real estate company, they have got the MCD approval, the municipal corporation approvals to the extent of 20,000 square feet, but they have built 30,000 square feet and sold it out. Nokler now says you have to first talk to the people who are charged with the governance to rectify the situation. And if they don't rectify, resign from the job. But your resignation from the job as an auditor or as an employee is not a substitute to your reporting to the enforcement agencies also. है तो बहुत मुश्किल काम, इसमें कोई शक नहीं. अब संजीव जी ने बना दिया, संजीव जी उस वक्त चेयरमैन थे, इन्होंने बनवा दिया, अब लोग फंसेंगे, और जब लोग फंसेंगे तो संजीव जी को याद भी करेंगे, इसमें भी कोई शक नहीं है. क्योंकि ISBA ने तो लिख दिया, ISBA ने लिख दिया, पर ISBA कि जो जिन कंट्रीज में ये इंप्लीमेंट होना है, कुछ कंट्रीज बिल्कुल अलग हैं. भाई यूएस में, इन यूएस, if their subsidiaries, if there is a parent company in US and their subsidiaries or their associates or their joint ventures pay bribes in any part of the world, they are supposed to make a declaration to SEC, that is the Security Exchange Commission, that we are making payments of briberies. And if they don't file, they are actually gone. हमारे यहाँ पे तो मतलब I don't have to say anything about it. लोग प्रैक्टिस, कई लोग तो प्रैक्टिस शायद इनकम टैक्स के इसीलिए करते हैं कि इनकम टैक्स में जाना अच्छा लगता, लोगों को मिलना अच्छा लगता. We all know what is the level of corruption. It is rampant. Corruption is rampant in the various departments. You just can't say that it is not there, and we can't close our eyes to that. And income tax cases or excise duty cases or GST cases, doesn't the government know what is happening? So adopting ISBA may be all right, but probably the chartered accountant himself may be knowing what is happening. Here, when till the time you actually tax the agricultural income, that's the way I look at it. You bring into fold the tax, because the conversion is taking place where? From cash to, from black to white. It is mainly agricultural sector where it happens, for that matter. And also at the same time, till the time the political parties stop taking the donations in cash. You cannot. After all, cash will have to, if the political parties keep on accepting the donations in cash, the cash will have to be generated by somebody in some particular form. How do you do that? And how does the auditor report that? Auditor has to report, but political parties have no accountability anywhere. That's the worst part of it. You see, the people who are ruling the country, the people who ruled or are ruling, they may have no accountability, but the chartered accountant who are auditing their books of accounts, the auditing the books of accounts of the corporates who give them the donations, they have the responsibility. I think there are certain fundamental things which need to be corrected. So before we bring the nuclear, I'm all for nuclear. Let me be very clear about it. I'm not opposing nuclear at all. But before that, please go to the government and tell them this is what we want to bring. Tomorrow, don't cry out when auditor reports something, even against the political parties. Because after all, the chartered accountants must be doing the audits of political parties also. After all, donations have been received by political parties also, from which kind of companies, which had no net worth at all, and still the contributions have been made. What is all that? That's all money laundering. It is nothing else. So the point that one is trying to drive you home is, nuclear is most welcome. You strangulate anybody, but at the same time, please create a socio-economic, socio-political, economic environment which is conducive to bringing in nuclear. That's the only point I'm trying to make out. After all, you see, you are living in a country where, without naming the company, I can say their book value is 30 rupees, rupees 30 per share. They have delisted themselves and are offering 90 paisa only to the minority shareholders. Can it be done? And we are expecting the chartered accountants to be saints, to be the only Spartans, basically. I think somewhere or the other, we have to look at the entire side. And that is where probably the council will have to argue on this point, debate on this point. Of course, this is one point which can become my unique selling point of the profession to the government, if I can implement it. But at the same time, we will face very, very tough challenges in reporting. I will give you one example, Sanjeev ji, and you can just counter me if you can counter me. There is a check which has been issued for preparation of a project report. The check is of 5 crore rupees. Project report is not even 10 pages. What is that? The money has been taken out to pay somewhere else. It is so crystal clear. But as an auditor, he says that is the way we pay the professionals. We never challenge the professionals, whether he will consider it to be money laundering or a genuine professional fee. It's going to be a daily war between the auditor and the client on these issues. So I think that is where I will like to leave on this particular issue. The second issue, which has been deferred, I think that will come back without doubt. They wanted to say that in the case of public interest entities, in which the banks, in which they used to, they wanted to cover banks also, the insurance companies also, the listed entities also, and certain other entities in which probably which were declared under the respective regulations of the public interest entities. You are the auditor of those companies. If you are rendering the assurance function of that company's entities, and if you are earning more than 15% of your gross receipts from that client for a consecutive period of 2 years, then it required you to go to those companies and to the people charged with the governance of those entities and tell them, "Hey, boss, I am dependent upon you." Now, this is something which defies logic to me. कि मैं किसी से जाके ये बोलूं कि भाई साहब मैं आप पे डिपेंडेंट हूं, मेरे पे मेहर रखिएगा. Either the institute says that if at all you are earning more than 15% from somebody, 2 years is fine. If third year you are unable to bring it below 15%, then you have to resign from that assignment. I can make out. But telling the auditor that you go to the people who are charged with governance and tell them that, boss, I'm dependent upon you. Suppose I'm earning 40% from a particular client, and I go to him and tell him, boss, I'm earning 40% from you. Please keep your Daya Drishti on me. What he will do? He will abuse it. He will misuse it. He knows that I am dependent upon him. He will make me sign more and more of the documents which I should not have been signing. Believe me. We live in a very different kind of a society. We know our corporate world, the way it functions. Rather than telling them, I think I must enforce it upon my member that if you continue to earn beyond this particular level, in that particular case, you should endeavor to bring it down below that level in the third year, and if you are unable to do it, resign it in the fourth year. I will not like to go to my client. I will better resign that, very frankly. Of course, it cannot be implemented in the mufassal towns, because if you implement it in smaller towns, they will be wiped out. You can be sure about it. Because the same person handles the audits, the same person handles the tax, everything is being handled by him. It is just not possible. And the other suggestion that I had given was that probably for the first 5 years of the practice, don't insist on this. That's also one of the ways. Or probably if you are getting, and I think that is the suggestion now which is going, if you are earning 5 lakh from one of the public interest entities, not more than 5 lakh from a public interest entity, up to 5 lakh rupees, it should not attract this disqualification. I think that's also fairly good. But all those who are hearing this particular program, I can only tell you one thing. In respect of public interest entities, there is no way that the auditor will be able to render the non-audit services in the years to come. Bound to be a segregation of this. Even under the Companies Act, it might come in. The reason being, if in UK FRC has recommended that Big Four will have to segregate their practices into audit and non-audit services. By 2024, in India it might happen by 2025. And I expect it to happen earlier, believe me. I am expecting it to happen earlier than 2024. People who are handling public interest entities will not be able to provide the non-audit services to those clients at all. At all, I am using the word. In the case of public interest entities, without any bar, without any limitation, without any floor level, to my mind, the people will not be able to render any kind of non-audit services in the years to come. They have to be prepared for it. That's the way I look at it. Non-audit services are going away from the people who are auditing the public interest entities. Yes, to the other clients, you may keep on doing it. That's a different matter, because that will be too much expecting them. Of course, in US, UK, they are saying that if you are handling public interest entities, you have to have a separate organization for the non-audit services. In that case, you cannot do the non-audit service for any of the clients. I think that's also far-fetched, very frankly, if you ask me. But in India, this is bound to happen, and this regulate. Earlier we were at 40%, if you ask me. Now we are talking of 15%. I think this 15% will have to be improved to about 30%. And maybe you can restore it to 40% only, whatever way the council will deem fit now, because some debate will happen in the council. But to my mind, the people who are earning up to about 15-20 lakh, if the gross receipt is up to about 20 lakhs, we should exempt them from this. We should look at it from that perspective. If I'm earning, say, a monthly only of 1 lakh rupee, because if my practice is 15 lakh rupees, my net earning cannot be more than 11 lakh, more than 1 lakh rupees per month. Rather, it will be lesser than that. So if my gross receipts are 15 lakh or 20 lakh rupees, to those people it should be exempted. That is the way I look at it. And that will simplify the things to a very large extent. And a very large number of membership will be put to some comfort level. Rather than getting into, because we are only trying to converge. It is only an attempt to make sure that the members remain independent. Because it should not jeopardize their independence with a particular client. That's the only thing which is being hinted at. This code of ethics brings to focus certain things. It talks of certain threats, and those threats are being discussed threadbare. It talks of threat of self-interest conflicts, if there is a conflict of self-interest. It talks of self-review threat. It talks of familiarity threat. It talks of what you can say the intimidation threat, for that matter. And it talks of advocacy threat. When I talk of conflict of interest, I have already discussed when I was discussing independence. If you have taken a loan from the company, you have a conflict of interest when you are rendering an attest function. If your wife is the MD, you have a conflict of interest. If your father is the MD or promoter, you have a conflict of interest. If you have loaned out certain amount to the company, there is a conflict of interest. If the company has stood your guarantor, there is a conflict of interest. So it says, please look at you will have to document it. I think that is the hallmark of this particular code of ethics. When peer reviewer will start coming to you now, he will start asking you, how did you assess your threat with regard to self-interest? And you will have to say that I have checked up these things. I have no self-interest threat. And if at all I had given something to the company or I had invested some amount in the company, this is the way I mitigate it, because Companies Act section 141 also talks of disqualifications of the auditors, and that is nothing but the conflict of interest basically. So there also it says that if up to 1 lakh face value of the shares you have invested in, probably you are not having any conflict of interest. Here also, suppose you have invested in a company more. It says you mitigate the threat. The mitigation of the threat is what? Bring it below that particular level. If you can bring it, and after even bringing it down, if you still feel that there is a conflict of interest, don't accept the assignment. But you will have to document it. I think that's the point it is trying to make up. Then it talks of familiarity threat. Familiarity threat is again, if the people who are at the helm of the affairs in the company, who are the main investors in the company, are known to you. If you have continued with the assignment for a fairly long period, then also it is a familiarity threat. And that is why the rotation of audit has actually come in. So you will have to prove to the peer reviewer that this familiarity threat I had assessed. One is identification of the threat, other is the assessment of the threat, and third is the mitigation of the threat. All that has to be actually, you can say, documented. The third one is the threat with regard to the self-review threat. You are giving an opinion on an item which is a part of the balance sheet or profit and loss account, and you have to review it. आप ही ने उसका ऑडिट करना, तो भैया वो नहीं. वो नहीं चलेगा. Then it is a self-review threat. इसीलिए ये कहा जाता है कि if you are the accountant, you cannot be the auditor of the, because maker and checker have to be different in any case. That's very, very important. Maker and checker cannot be the same. So self-review threat doesn't have to be there. It can be a company law opinion, it can be an income tax opinion, it can be any opinion. You have to be very clear as to what you are doing. And the other thing that you need to be very clear is that this particular, and that is where I differ with this ethical code, on this particular code. This code says that if you are doing the audit, you may not be able to give the opinion, but your other partner, who is not the assurance partner, may be able to give the opinion. You assess that particular threat, and if you feel that there is no threat to your independence, please go ahead, because it is not a self-review threat. It may not be a self-review threat, but it is an independence threat. That is where I think, Sanjeev ji, I'm begging to differ. Why it is an independence threat? Whatever is the opinion given, if the fee is charged in respect of that particular opinion, where does that fee go? It does not go to that individual, it goes to the firm. And as a partner, you share that particular fee, and that is where the conflict of interest comes in. Then I can jolly well say on all the issues, please take the opinion. One from the company law expert who is in my firm, one from the tax expert who is in my firm, one on FAMO who is my expert. So I can keep on suggesting opinion after opinion from different people. I may not give an opinion, and I will say that I don't have a self-review threat. I will not have a self-review threat, but I will definitely have, I can dare say this, a self-conflict, a conflict of interest threat or independence threat in that particular matter. So that's the way I look at the situation, basically. And in this context only, it has been said that when you are doing the tax practice, when you are doing the audit and you are doing the tax practice also, up to representation stage, it might be all right that you go. But if there are certain additions which have been made, in that case, if you want to go to appeal, whether you should be undertaking that appeal yourself or not, please assess that particular threat. Because again, the work that you have done as an auditor, you are going to review that again for the purpose of appeal. The reason being, suppose the income tax officer has made an addition to the gross profit, saying that your gross profit margin has gone down drastically, or he has made certain additions saying that there are certain unvouched expenses. So आपका तो self-review threat ही है ना, because you will never agree to that, because ultimately that audit work has been done by you, the papers have been checked by you. So it says, please be very clear whether you want to undertake it or not. And suppose you lose that particular appeal. Suppose the addition has been made for unvouched expenses, or the additions have been made for a gross profit margin, and you lose that appeal. What does it mean? It means that you are negligent in the discharge of your duties. Forget the self-review threat. Because if you have not been able to defend even in appeal that the expenses were duly vouched or the valuation of the inventory was proper, in that case, you are yourself running a great risk of being held grossly negligent in the discharge of your duties. There has been a case in the institute earlier that, let me tell you, that the person was the auditor of the company, the respondent was the auditor of the company. He went for the assessment, and while getting the assessment done, he signed on the note sheet on which certain additions were agreed to for the unvouched expenses. He was held guilty. Why he was held guilty? You are the auditor and you are agreeing to on the note sheet that unvouched expenses are there in this particular organization. So please try to avoid that kind of a threat. And the last one that one will like to talk to you is the advocacy threat. Or no, rather intimidation and advocacy threat. Intimidation threat is that you are undertaking the assignment for a party whom you will never be able to say no for certain threats. The threat can be that your son is employed with him, your wife is employed with him, your father is employed with him, and you feel that if you give some report, they may throw them out of the organization, or you are undertaking the audit of a Don underworld person, then you are running the risk yourself. If you are becoming the auditor of a political party, I think you are under an intimidation threat. Let's be very clear about it. The day this particular party gets into the ruling party side, will you be able to write something against them? I think this is something which one has to really find out. Intimidation threat तो है, आप उसको mitigate कैसे करते हैं, आप उसको लेते कैसे हैं, that's a different matter. And lastly is with regard to the advocacy, कि आप जिस क्लाइंट का ऑडिट कर रहे हैं, आप उसके पब्लिक इशू के रोड शोज में शामिल हो रहे हैं और आप उसकी तारीफ के पुल बांधना शुरू करते हैं हर जगह पे, जी इनसे तो बढ़िया कोई कंपनी नहीं है, तो ऑडिट भी आप ही ने किया हुआ, आप ही उसकी एडवोकेसी कर रहे हैं। एक राइस मिल है हमारे यहाँ पे, राइस की कंपनी है, उनके ऑडिटर्स ने यही किया तो फंस गए प्रोफेशनल मिसकंडक्ट के अंदर, कंप्लेंट हुई तो जिस कंपनी का आप ऑडिट कर रहे हैं उसका प्रोडक्ट बेचना मत शुरू कर दीजिए, because then that is an advocacy threat. Let's be very clear about it. So that's the point one will like to bring out to you. So these were the various threats which we face during the course of our audit, and we have to overcome. And I think this particular code of ethics is too good on this particular ground. इसका सबसे बड़ा गुण ये है, दिस पर्टिकुलर कोड ऑफ एथिक्स जो पहले नहीं था, ये कहता है कि आप इसको आइडेंटिफाई कर लें थ्रेट को, यू प्लीज आइडेंटिफाई द थ्रेट, देन असेस द ग्रेविटी ऑफ द मैटर, ग्रेविटी ऑफ द थ्रेट, and if you feel that this is grave enough that you cannot accept the assignment, try to mitigate it, and if you are unable to mitigate it, then resign from the position. I think that is what it says, and that is what you will have to now prove in the papers to the various peer reviewers as they come to your doorstep. I think today I will only like to cover this much, Vivek ji, basically. Sir, because I've tried to cover mota everything, whatever had to be done, unless Sanjeev feels something else is to be done. I think जो जितना मोटा था changes हुई हैं वो मैंने cover कर दी।
संजीव जी वांट
छोटे पॉइंट हैं, कोई बहुत लंबा चौड़ा पॉइंट है नहीं इसके अंदर, तो उसकी मैं कोई ज्यादा बात नहीं करना चाह रहा हूँ।
कुछ क्वेरीज है सर, वो ले लें। संजीव जी वांट टू से समथिंग, उससे पहले कुछ क्वेरीज है, ले लें।
आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
हेलो,
अभी भी आपका माइक म्यूट पे है।
Yes sir, can you hear me?
Sanjeev, are you able to hear him? I'm not able to hear you.
I can hear Vivek now ji, I can hear him.
I'm not able to get it.
आपके पास शायद वॉइस नहीं आ रही हमारी।
I don't know.
मेरे तक
आपके पास वॉइस नहीं आ रही सर, शायद इको या कुछ ईयरफोन।
मेरा तो पूरा वॉल्यूम पे है पर मुझे आवाज नहीं आ रही आपकी।
अब आ रही है सर?
Anyway, in chat there are about 8 things. I will let me see what these are. We'll take few queries.
कुछ queries
है,
कुछ
nice gathering as compared to the topic around 190. You can put it in the chat box, then I will answer because I'm unable to get your.
Okay. Yes, Sanjeev sir, you want to say something because I think disconnect हो गया चोपड़ा सर का।
नहीं, मैंने चोपड़ा साहब को एड्रेस करना था, उन्होंने कुछ चीजों के लिए मुझे कहा ना, तो मैंने कहा वो क्रेडिट मेरा नहीं है, क्रेडिट काउंसिल का है, मेरा डेबिट है सर।
आगे सर शायद। Yes sir, can you hear me?
आ रही है।
I think it's correct.
अच्छा सर, कुछ क्वेरीज ले लेते हैं सर, अगर if you permit।
बताइए।
तो whether we can develop software and उसकी royalty या sale of software, whether a chartered accountant in practice can do?
Develop software, you can do it. It is a professional job, but not of the organization of which you are the auditor, basically.
ओके
वो फिर देखना पड़ेगा कि नॉन ऑडिट सर्विस कौन कौन सी बैन होती है।
कुछ आईसीआई यस यस
नहीं, अगर आप ऑडिटर नहीं हो उसके, सपोज कीजिए यू आर नॉट द ऑडिटर ऑफ द कंपनी एंड देन यू डेवलप ए सॉफ्टवेयर फॉर हिम, तो रॉयल्टी आप ले पाएंगे, वो तो बिजनेस हो जाएगा।
अच्छा
आप
कुछ
सॉफ्टवेयर
क्वेरीज
डेवलप करके उसके जो प्रोफेशनल चार्जेस आपने लेने ले लीजिए।
कुछ क्वेरीज सर वो काउंसिल से रिलेटेड है, अगर आप एफिशिएंट है लेना या फिर मैं ना
किससे?
कुछ जैसे वो आईसीआई कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट काउंसिल के लिए क्यों नहीं मैंडेटरी, ये एक्सेट्रा समथिंग।
ऐसा है, ये जिस कोड ऑफ
No, he is the
कंडक्ट
best
की
person to
मैंने
answer.
बात की है, दैट इज मैंडेटरी इवन फॉर द इलेक्टेड मेंबर्स। लेट मी बी वेरी क्लियर अबाउट इट।
आई थिंक ये कुछ और 2006 की बात कर रहे हैं
ये
शायद।
ये ये कुछ और बात कर रहे हैं, ये बात करना चाह रहे हैं कि साहब उनका कोई कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स का अलग होना चाहिए, वो
यस
आप काउंसिल में बात कर लीजिए।
ठीक है
मैं एक बात जानता हूं, ईच वन ऑफ अस, एज आई सेड, that
यस सर
ethical behavior does not require to be codified. I think even for elected representative, we don't need to codify a particular act. The various elected representatives should be able to conduct themselves in a manner which an elected representative should be conducting. They should not be there to get the clients for themselves. I think that is their main worry, if you ask me. कि भाई हर एक आदमी अपने क्लाइंट लेने के लिए तो नहीं जाता कहीं काउंसिल में। तो अगर कोई कर रहा है तो उस पर तो मैं कुछ कमेंट नहीं करना चाहता हूँ, अगर किसी का स्पेसिफिक कोई कहता। बट you see, there are some very, very good examples also who have never tried it, and there may be certain examples who have tried it. अब उसके बारे में क्या बोलूं?
सर एक ये भी बहुत क्वेरीज है, like some people are who are not chartered accountant, like accountant, and they show their self as the auditor, या वो
No, so
advertisement
we file the FIR, but the penalty which is prescribed under the act is too low.
5000
I think
yes
we have to hand them over to the police.
yes 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 yes
Yeah.
और सर कुछ ये क्वेरीज वो जीएसटी का जो चल रहा था उसके ऊपर, इफ यू कैन आंसर, वो जो आईसीआई ने जो 2.5 करोड़ रुपीस की पेनल्टी एक्सेट्रा पे करी है, कुछ समथिंग लाइक दैट।
बॉस ऐसा है, मैं मेंबर्स को एक बात कहना चाहूंगा, आई एम नॉट ट्राइंग टू डिफेंड द इंस्टीट्यूट। जीएसटी इज एन इवॉल्विंग लॉ। कॉर्पोरेट्स में भी जब लॉ इवॉल्व होता है, डिफरेंट ओपिनियंस लिए जाते हैं, उन ओपिनियंस के बेसिस पे कुछ काम किए जाते हैं। Institute originally thought service tax is not applicable to them, and we are still contesting that also. And most of the people, like Mr. Batra also said service tax is not applicable, but I think in GST he had said it is applicable. But two of the top experts said that this is not applicable. Now, once people say it is not applicable, it was not, probably it was not collected. I think the council president can answer it better. But I will like to say at times it does happen that you go by certain legal opinions. Corporates also go by certain legal opinions, and some penalties or interest can arise as a consequence thereof. We should not take it in a manner as if the council members have misconducted themselves. Let's be very clear about it. There can be certain professional issues, basically. किसी टॉप एक्सपर्ट्स ने ये कहा, who are dealing only in GST, कि साहब इस पे एप्लीकेबल नहीं है, तो आफ्टर ऑल वो भी तो प्रोफेशनल भाई थे, उनकी एडवाइस भी सुनी गई। अब आप ये कहें कि साहब 3 एक्सपर्ट्स उस वक्त काउंसिल में भी थे, काउंसिल मेंबर्स ने उनको ये कहा होगा कि साहब आपकी एडवाइस हम नहीं मानते, हमें बाहर की एडवाइस चाहिए। बाहर की एडवाइस ली, उन्होंने कहा एप्लीकेबल नहीं है। So I think these things do happen in the corporate world also. It is an evolving law. It is being contested. Let us wait for what happens. Yes, it is a penalty. It should have been avoided. It could have been avoided. I will not say it should have been avoided. It could have been avoided. But if it is levied, it is not something where the professional colleague, our council members have misconducted themselves. Yes, to an extent you can say they could have been wiser, and a person can be a wiser in hindsight in any case.
सर एक और कुछ जो मेजर इशू आता है रिगार्डिंग द प्रोजेक्टेड रिपोर्ट, इवन सम कंपनीज आस्क फॉर द प्रोजेक्टेड रिपोर्ट, जैसे वो राजस्थान में बता रहे हैं कोई RIPS स्कीम्स में
आपका 540 है, SF 540 है, आप साइन कर सकते हो, परंतु उसमें 540 को पूरा फॉलो करो। आप ये लिखो कि ये assumptions मेरी नहीं है, प्रोजेक्शंस मेरी नहीं है, उन assumptions को टेस्ट करो पूरे का पूरा। अगर उसके बेसिस पे आप दे सकते हो तो दे दीजिए। And you have to write that you have not audited this information, you have not reviewed this information, assumptions are not yours for that matter. तो सारा टेस्ट करके, पर ये नहीं होना चाहिए ना कि उन्होंने कहा अगले साल ऑटो की सेल 200% बढ़ जाएगी। बढ़ कैसे जाएगी अगर सारी दुनिया में कम हो रही है? तो अगर आप ये कहें कि जी रियल एस्टेट में मैं 2 करोड़ का फ्लैट बेच लूंगा, जयपुर में खड़ा हो गया इमीडिएटली, जी वहां पे 50 लाख का फ्लैट अगर ना बिके, मैं जयपुर की बात सिर्फ नाम लिया है, एग्जांपल दिया, जयपुर वाले इससे ऑफेंडेड फील नहीं करें, अगर वहां पे कहीं पे 50 लाख का या 60 लाख का फ्लैट नहीं बिक रहा, आप कह रहे हो 2 करोड़ के बेच लेंगे, तो वो एजम्पशन तो गलत है ना, वो हमें देखना पड़ेगा।
सर एक और क्वेरीज है जो आजकल सोशल मीडिया पे है कि सोशल मीडिया पे सब लोग प्रमोट कर रहे हैं अपनी फॉर्म्स का, ट्विटर पे एक्सेट्रा, तो उसमें
You can't promote your firms, you can promote yourself, you cannot promote your firms.
एग्जैक्टली अच्छा
Have you
एक
ever
और
seen Amarjit Chopra writing GS and Associates anywhere?
कहीं
Except
आपने
whenever I have to say that I have a vacancy of the job.
यस
There also I avoid writing the name of the firm. But people keep on you sending pamphlets.
यस
अभी वो किसी ने पम्फलेट बांटे हैं कि जी मैं कोविड-19 में लोगों को फ्री में एडवाइस दूंगा, ये मेरी फर्म है, या 50 रुपए में एडवाइस दूंगा, तो भैया उसका क्या करें?
यस चूरन वाले बाबा वाला यस
I think the case is being initiated against that firm. That's all I can tell you.
सर एक और क्वेरी है फॉर नॉट प्रोवाइडिंग द रेवेन्यू शेयर पेबल टू गवर्नमेंट correctly by telecom companies, now Vodafone having demand of 50k crore, auditor responsibility in this
यार
certification.
किस ऑडिटर को रगड़वाओगे? अभी 3 ऑडिटर तो अभी रगड़े गए नफरा में, कोई 7 साल से गया, कोई 5 साल से गया, इसका भी अगर नंबर आएगा तो आ ही जाएगा, क्या दिक्कत है?
एक चौधरी साहब जो आपने डायरेक्टर सिंप्लीफिकेशन के ऊपर बात करी थी, whether he become the director of any committee, audit committee.
I think people don't understand what is the director simpliciter. डायरेक्टर सिंप्लिसिटर का मतलब ये है कि आप सिर्फ सिटिंग फी ले सकते हैं, या जो कमीशन प्रिस्क्राइब्ड है अंडर द कंपनीज एक्ट नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर्स के लिए वो ले सकते हैं, उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं ले सकते। आप किसी आरओसी फॉर्म पे साइन नहीं करेंगे, आप किसी बैंक के चेक के ऊपर साइन नहीं करेंगे, यू विल नॉट इंटरवीन इनटू डे टू डे एक्टिविटी। I think that's the definition of director simpliciter. And none of your family members must have a substantial interest in the organization. अगर आपकी वाइफ के, आपके बच्चों के, आपके पेरेंट्स के शेयर 20% से ऊपर हैं, तो आप डायरेक्टर सिंप्लिसिटर उस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में नहीं हो सकते।
अच्छा अगर आपने ड्यू डिलिजेंस कर रखी है किसी फर्म के, whether you can take the internal audit assignment.
If you have conducted due diligence, internal audit आप ले सकते हैं।
इंटरनल ऑडिट में कोई इशू नहीं। ओके सर एक और जैसे अभी रिसेंट क्वेरीज है लाइक जो सुशांत केस में चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स हैं वो क्लैरिफिकेशन दे रहे हैं टीवीज पे, रिया के चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स, तो वेदर दे कैन डू, अभी एक तो क्वेरीज है उसके अंदर।
If the court summon you, if the court summon you, the court can get anything from you.
उसी में एक फर्दर है जैसे अभी कोई एक एक्स कंपनी फोरेंसिक ऑडिटर अपॉइंट हुई है, तो उनके एम्प्लॉइज राइटिंग ऑन द LinkedIn and other on Facebook etc that we our company XYZ appointed as the forensic auditor, whether they can
that is a professional misconduct.
Yes. Okay. And
ग्रांट ऑर्डर की बात कर रहे हैं आप?
मैं नाम नहीं ले रहा सर, बता दो
आप नाम ले दो ना, मैं नाम ले देता हूँ आपको, आप नाम
everybody knows, वो तो पेपर में ही आ गया सर वो तो। Now another query is he is saying कि CA प्रोफेशन अब तो बहुत ही ज्यादा रिस्की हो गया है।
हाँ रिस्की तो शुरू से था, हमने कभी माना नहीं रिस्क, ये बात अलग है।
Now
हम
विशाल
पहले बहुत बोल्ड बहुत थे, रेगुलेटर्स इतने सख्त नहीं थे, अब रेगुलेटर सख्त हो गए इसलिए रिस्की हो गया, रिस्की तो हमेशा ही था।
विशाल जी वांट्स टू से कि जो टैक्स ऑडिट है या दूसरे हमारे ऑडिट है, शुड बी सम सेंट्रल एजेंसी शुड बी देयर।
वो होगा नहीं, वो ट्राई कर चुके हैं हम, वो बहुत ट्राई किया, काउंसिल अल्टीमेटली रिजेक्टेड दैट प्रपोजल, और प्रपोजल मेरा ही था। In 2001 I brought that proposal and I think around 2003 or 4 it was rejected by the council.
ये एक और क्वेरी अभिनव गुप्ता जी, sometime it's checking auditing accountant, we have to get correct the books entry as per income tax act and these documents are kept in our file, is it not the threat to auditor?
Definitely it is a threat to the auditor. अगर आप 2 ट्रायल बैलेंस अपनी किताबों में अपनी फाइल में रखोगे तो आपको थ्रेट है ही ना।
यस यस
मेरे ख्याल में यहाँ पे खत्म करते हैं विवेक जी।
हाँ सर, काफी क्वेरीज है, फिर वो बाकी उसी के ऊपर रिलेटेड है। यस हाँ, कुछ
देखो, जो ये जो काउंसिल मेंबर्स के ऊपर रिलेटेड है वो आप अतुल जी से पूछ लेना किसी दिन बुला के।
हाँ वही करना पड़ेगा
लेकिन
सर एक्चुअली। मैं तो सिर्फ ओनली रिक्वेस्ट है कि वी हैव द कोड ऑफ एथिक्स। सर संजीव जी आपने बोलना है ना शायद समथिंग, माय ओनली रिक्वेस्ट इज कि दीज कोड ऑफ एथिक्स आर फॉर मेंबर्स एंड नॉट ए, यू कैन से दैट कोई आपके लिए टूल नहीं है फॉर काउंसिल मेंबर टू यूज अगेंस्ट अदर मेंबर्स या यूर कंपिटिटर और समथिंग। दिस इज फॉर एवरीवन। यस यस चौधरी सर, आप कुछ कहना चाहते
मैंने आपको एक बात पहले की और मैं रिपीट कर रहा हूँ, जो कंडक्ट मैं दूसरे से अपने लिए एक्सपेक्ट करता हूँ वही कंडक्ट मुझे दूसरे को देना, बस सीधी सी बात है।
एग्जैक्टली एग्जैक्टली,
इससे ज्यादा मैंने और कुछ कहना नहीं है।
यस सर,
जो आज कोई, अगर मैं ये कह सकता हूँ, अगर एक्स वाई के अगेंस्ट यूज करता है तो कल जेड जो है वो वाई के अगेंस्ट यूज करेगा। ये तो आप मान के चलिएगा।
वही सर, उसी में मैं सिर्फ बस चौधरी सर एक सेकंड सिर्फ यूज कर रहा हूँ। कल एक बहुत अच्छा व्हाट्सएप आया था रामलला के ऊपर कि जो सारथी थे आज वो उसका वो भूमि पूजन कर रहे हैं, जिन्होंने रथ रोका वो आज जेल में है, और जिन्होंने डंडे चलाए थे वो अपना उसके लिए कर रहे हैं, जान की वो भीख मांग रहे हैं। एंड प्लस जिन्होंने सोचा था कि राम जी है या नहीं, वो आज उनका अपना अस्तित्व कर रहे हैं। तो टाइम सबका आता है।
Let us not talk this political.
हाँ,
Yeah,
yes,
I don't think that me or Sanjeev will like to answer this question.
No, सर चौधरी सर कुछ और कहना चाह रहे
हैं। ये सब ठीक है यार,
हैं। ये छोड़ दिया सर, ये छोड़ दिया।
ये सब ठीक है, ये छोड़ दो इसको।
हाँ हाँ, आप चौधरी सर।
राम मंदिर बन रहा है, ये
बस
गर्व की बात है, बस इतने कहूंगा, बस यही पे खत्म है।
यस सर। सर
संजीव
अनम्यूट
जी आपका म्यूट पे है।
I would just like to say only a couple of things very quickly, paucity of time. I think Chopra Sahab said that I am responsible somewhere, for the 2018 code. In all humility, I think the credit goes to the council because the council approved it. If there is something which is incorrect, then I'll take the responsibility of the debit. So debit is mine, the credit is of the council. That is one. With due respect, sir, you have been a great warrior of the code. Second, I think you mentioned about the code of conduct for the council members. I think this code, obviously, as Chopra Sahab said, is applicable to all. I think it is up to each one of us to behave correctly and properly, as Chopra Sahab said, that what you expect from others is what you should do. As the golden lines he said. I think the leaders have to stand tall because a lot of us look up to them. And that is where I think they have a responsibility which they should do it themselves. We can't teach them anything. We can teach only ourselves. So I take a responsibility for my actions. We can't take a responsibility for someone else's action. That's the short point. And I think it was good to have Amarjit ji because he gave us a lot of examples of what cases he looked at. I mean, he can go on for the next 4, 6, 10 hours because he would have done hundreds of cases during, before and even now as well. So I think I'll stop here. I thought I'll just kind of just make 1 or 2 points, nothing else. So I'll stop here now.
Again, I would like to only make out one point. Elected representative or non-elected representative. ये एक बात पक्की है कि अगर मैं इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हूं तो मुझे अपने आप को कंडक्ट थोड़ा सा बेटर करना है कंपेयर टू द अदर, बिकॉज आई एम एक्सपोज टू पब्लिक। और लोग मेरे से कुछ एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि मुझे क्या करना है, तो मेरे को एक एग्जांपल सेट करना है बेसिकली। लेट मी बी वेरी क्लियर, इफ आई एम द इलेक्टेड मेंबर, आई शुड नॉट बी सिटिंग इन द C&AG ऑफिस ऑन अ डेली बेसिस यार। I should not be sitting in RBI office on a daily basis. हाँ, अगर मुझे ड्यूटी लगाई प्रेसिडेंट ने कि जाके मिलो तो मैं जाऊंगा, अगर मेरा उनके साथ कोई प्रोग्राम है तो मैं जाऊंगा, बट आई विल नॉट बी गोइंग टू देम ऑन अ डेली बेसिस कि मैं आऊं कहीं से बाहर से और कोट टांग के काउंसिल में और किसी गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस में घूमता रहूं। वो नहीं होना चाहिए। वो कंडक्ट हर एक इंडिविजुअल का है बेसिकली, नथिंग मोर नथिंग लेस देन दैट। देयर आई विल लाइक टू स्टॉप। अगर हम ये कहें नहीं जी उनका एक बिल्कुल सेपरेट सेट ऑफ कोड होना चाहिए, क्या कोड होना चाहिए? We all understand that we have to work for the good of the profession. No, people may or may not do that. That's a different matter altogether. I don't want to. No code tells you that you can throw some parties at the cost of the institute. No code tells you that you can organize a program just before the elections and then throw a party in the five-star hotel at the cost of the institute. Does the code allow you to do that? No code allows you that you get the books printed and give it free of cost to the various members. No code allows you to do that. But if someone does it, I think people must understand ना कि क्यों कर रहा है और कब कर रहा है यार.
सबको पता है.
मेरी बार बार एक ही बात है, मैं खुले में ये बात कह रहा हूँ. हम कहते हैं यार आप कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट बनाओ कि इलेक्शन में पार्टीज नहीं होंगी. मैं कहता हूँ आप पार्टीज में जाना छोड़ दो ना यार.
एग्जैक्टली.
आप अपने आप को इतना क्यों गिरा रहे हो कि कोई पार्टी देगा मैं जाऊंगा और वो मेरे से ये एक्सपेक्ट करे कि मेरी पार्टी खा के ये मेरे को सेकंड थर्ड फर्स्ट प्रेफरेंस दे जाएगा. Then who is going down? Because these are not the things which institute will be able to monitor. आप कह दोगे भी 50 की पार्टी करोगे, मतलब कि 50 से ऊपर लोगों की गैदरिंग नहीं कर सकते, और यहाँ आप अपने नाम पे, वो कहता है जी मेरे बेटे का बर्थडे है, मेरे दोस्त के बेटे का बर्थडे, आप कैसे रोक लोगे? Can you stop it?
Yes.
You can't stop it. That is what I said. Certain ethics cannot be codified. This cannot be a law. This has to be practiced. I have also contested 7 elections यार. ऐसा नहीं है. हम किसी भी मेंबर को बोलते थे अपने यहाँ पे 25 आदमियों को बुला ले, 20 आदमियों को बुला ले, चाय का कप पिला दे, खत्म करना बात को. I think elections have to be fought. There is no doubt about it. But then elections have to be fought in a particular manner. You can't make it out of reach of a normal member. I am saying it. आज की डेट में एक नॉर्मल मेंबर की रीच के ये बाहर हो गया इलेक्शन लड़ना, which is very very dangerous. It must be कि मैं कंट्रीब्यूट करूं 3 साल प्रोफेशन को, 4 साल 5 साल 6 साल कुछ करूं पब्लिक लाइफ में लेके, और फिर उसको सिर्फ एडवर्टाइज करके मैं इलेक्शन में लड़ लूं. और थ्रू दिस वेबिनार, अब तो इतनी बढ़िया चीज हो गई, अगर मैं एक्सपोज हो सकता हूं, मैं लोगों को अपने एड्रेसेस कर सकता हूं, तो वो करके इलेक्शन लड़ सकता हूं ना. क्या दिक्कत है?
Exactly. So really, thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful session, Chopra sir and Chaudhary ji. Really, sir, we are honored for that. And our request to you, please give us time on the regular basis and guide us on different topics. And I know you are the master, seriously. Either it's accounting standard, code of ethics, bank audit, bank fraud cases. So my request to you, please give your blessing on time to time. Sir, thank you.
आपने शुरू में एक बात कही थी, मैं ना नहीं करता किसी को.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. वो मैं
Thank
आपके सबके सामने हाथ रखा हूँ. Yes, sir.
you, boss.
Thank
Thank you.
thank